Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories, shall we? The first story is called Just Following Orders. I worked as a security guard. I was driving around industrial areas and responding to alarms that go off at the buildings from our clients. When I started there, I was told to ask for a proper ID, something like a driving license or passport or ID card if I encounter someone in the building and note their details in the report. This was very common, as most alarms came from people not turning off the alarm in time or entering the wrong code. But if they can't show ID, kindly request them to leave and close the building. If they refuse, I should call the police to deal with it. Laws here make it so that security guards are just civilians. This means I can ask for an ID, but if they refuse to give it, there's nothing I can do. Only law enforcement officers can demand an ID. Also, my assistant manager hates me for some reason, always looking for something to pin on me. So for a few years I did as I was told. Some would show credit cards or other things with their name on them, then I would write it in my report, but still ask them to leave. All this time the assistant manager would go over these reports in the morning, but I never heard any complaint about it. So I was doing stuff right, I thought. After a few years, on this particular day I got an alarm, so I drove there. I arrive at the building, go in and find the cleaning lady doing her job. The alarm system log showed that she entered the wrong code the first time and was just a little too late entering it correctly the second time. This happened a lot. I kindly asked her for an ID and she tells me she doesn't have any with her. She shows me a bank card with her name. I write it in the report, including it was from a bank card, and tell her she has to leave. She understands, picks up her stuff and leaves. I finish my report and go on my merry way. The next morning I received an email from my assistant manager. He was going nuts over the fact that I sent the cleaning lady away without noting down proper ID details, and telling me the client is mad because they wanted to know who was in the building. I calmly replied that I did what I always did and was instructed to do when I joined the company, and had been doing without any issue for the last 3 or 4 years. The reply came fast with detailed instructions. If someone doesn't have a proper ID on them, you call the police and have them identify the person so you can note it in your report. The assistant manager also made a memo stating this to everyone in the unit. Of course, I made a copy of this too. As the good employee that I am, I followed that instruction to the letter. Most others didn't, as they weren't targeted by the assistant manager, so they could do whatever they wanted. I called the police every time a person couldn't show me proper identification. This happened almost every shift I worked, if not multiple times in a single shift. This led to a few things. A few employees of clients actually were arrested for failing to identify to a law enforcement officer. This wasn't my intention at all. Some police officers were jerks and just arrested them even though they could verify the identity of someone fairly simple on location. Other times the police called my manager. They wanted to know why the heck they were called every single day to go and confirm someone's name because they didn't have ID on them. Multiple clients called the manager why a simple alarm was taking 3 times longer than usual. The clients have to pay per 15 minutes I'm on site after the initial 15 minutes have passed. Of course, they were refusing to pay the extra fee for me waiting for the police to show up. As I expected, I got invited for a talk with my manager and assistant manager to discuss some things. Basically, my manager wanted to chew me out over all these calls he had been getting, let alone people being arrested. So the next day, I sat down with my manager and the assistant manager. The assistant manager was very cheerful, as his favorite target was getting a huge reprimand. The manager asked me why I called the police every time someone doesn't have a proper identification. He asked me if I have any idea how mad the police is, and how many clients are refusing to pay the fee because it takes so much longer when I have to wait for the police. Basically, I cost the company a lot of money. After the manager has asked these questions, I pull out my folder. It contains the email conversation with the assistant manager, instructing me to do exactly that. And the copy of the now conveniently disappeared from the office memo with the same instructions, both signed by the assistant manager. The same assistant manager that is now turning pale, realizing what I'm about to hand over to the manager. I calmly explain to the manager while he is reading both papers that I am only following the instructions given to me, and that I had clearly been doing it wrong for the last 3 to 4 years prior to this incident. The face of the manager is slowly turning red from anger. Meanwhile, the assistant manager is turning paler by the second. Before the manager explodes, he asks me to go grab a coffee and wait till he calls me back in there. They needed to go over these papers and decide what they would do with me. Sure thing, boss. While I'm enjoying my coffee, I can hear my manager go mental on his assistant. Multiple things like, "How can you be so stupid?" and "They have it on paper, you idiot," are clearly heard across the entire floor. When I get called back in, I can see my assistant manager sitting silently, shamefully behind his computer, attempting to avoid any and all eye contact with me. The manager calmly explains he wasn't aware of these papers, and that I should follow the instructions as all other employees should. He wanted to save face, as admitting this was wrong and changing the instructions would mean the defeat of the management, and that he would inform all clients about this so they can avoid these kinds of incidents. I spent the next 9 years following these instructions. I mainly did it to anger the assistant manager. He would read my reports every morning, telling about how the police had to show up again and again for something silly. Eventually, they found a way to get rid of me, reassigning me to a new position, which I gladly accepted, as the work was a lot more fun. I actually became a law enforcement officer with that switch. The pay was better and the hours were even sweeter. The next story is called Meet Bob. Bob is someone I know. Bob is a great guy. He has worked hard to support his family his whole life. I admire Bob because he can fix a lot of things on his cars and house and such. He is almost entirely self-taught and has a lot of common sense despite not being book smart. This is why I was astounded that he had me do this. Bob can also be stubborn as all heck and gets to be a real jerk when he is stubborn. Bob's wife found a beautiful roll-top desk at a yard sale. She had wanted one for years. Bob asked me to drive to the yard sale with my pickup. Sure thing, Bob. I don't mind helping you out a bit. Bob's wife was excited. Her eyes were gleaming. It was huge, heavy AF and old. It was also a very nice desk. So Bob and I and the seller get it manhandled into my pickup bed. I grab straps and Bob snaps at me. We don't have time for that. Let's get it back to the house. I know damn well it isn't going to hold still, and I tell him so. Yes, it will. It is a big heavy desk. Drive really slowly with your hazards on. Now I, who actually paid attention to physics in high school, knew where this is going. I protested. Let's lay it down or strap it. Bob overruled me. Bob's wife said something. No, he didn't want the desk made up by straps. I said something again. Bob got mad and yelled. Screw the straps, let's go. Just drive as I said. I said screw it. I did exactly what he said, despite it being my truck. After all, Bob had done a lot of free work on my pickup for me. I was doing him a favor, so whatever. Let him be stubborn. We left the yard sale at 10 miles per hour, with a dozen or so people staring after us. Bob and his wife were in their Corvette behind me. I was doing exactly what he said, driving really slow with my hazard lights blinking. We make it a few blocks to the main road that will take us most of the way to Bob's house. I get in the turn lane to wait. The desk starts to shift. The turn lane turns green and I edge out at about 5 to 7 miles per hour. The top-heavy desk tilted, started to shift, then the wheels on one side came up. Nothing you do at that point is going to work to stop it from tilting. Physics wins again. Bob's wife's new desk died a horrible death in the middle of Powers Boulevard in Colorado Springs one warm spring day in 1993. I could hear her wailing through the open window. Sorry, Bob's wife. I wanted you to have that thing. You were so happy. And the last story for today's video is called A Bad Way to Save Money. It was in the 1990s when I worked for a software company in Germany. They developed telephone billing systems for major European carriers. The IT infrastructure was based on Windows NT 4.0 workstation and servers. Each server had a redundant counterpart to ensure a functioning network all the time. One day, when I was working in the air-conditioned room for the servers, I saw that the primary domain controller had some problems with the hard drives. It seemed that the SCSI controller was about to give up, and the database server wasn't in a better shape. Immediately, I informed the CIO about it and ordered the needed parts. So far, so good. Until the CEO and the CFO cancelled the order and demanded that every redundant server needs to be uninstalled. I tried to tell them that the current structure is needed and demanded by the major shareholder. And to add insult to injury, I explained to them that cancelling the order for urgently needed hardware components to keep the whole network running is irresponsible. Both looked at me like Snape would sneer at Harry Potter and ignored my arguments. They ordered me to do as demanded. I thought to myself, okay, they want me to sabotage the company. Then they will get what they want. To cover my bases, I asked for a written order, which was given to me within an hour. I made 3 copies of it and sent the original one to the CIO and to the HR together with my resignation. I asked to have my overtime to be converted to 3 days. When the OK came, I started to do as requested, even when I knew that the whole thing would end in a disaster. Every redundant server was shut down. The hard drives were formatted and the device were returned to the storage facility. At the end of the day, I said my goodbye to my coworkers and left to never return. I knew what would happen within a week or 2, but I didn't care anymore. I had been put through so much at this company that I was glad to have quit my job. A few of my coworkers had become good friends and we still have a good connection and help each other once in a while. Well, a few days later I got a frantic call from the CIO. The whole network was down and nothing was working. The PDC crashed spectacularly and the database server had followed right after. My reply was, sorry, but I don't work for you guys anymore and I'm on vacation. Good luck and goodbye. I complied with the request made by the upper echelon of the company, while maliciously wishing them to be sued by the major shareholder. This then happened, and the company went down pretty fast. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.